Hey everybody, Stephen Garner here, Team Most Awesome, Team Canada. And today we're going to do normal servicing. This is the servicing that should get done every 5 to 10 hours. There's some things such as your spark plug and your exhaust ball that should actually get cleaned out every 5 hours. And then we're going to deal with that front bearing as well. That should be oiled every 10 hours if you're a freshwater user. If you're a saltwater user, I would recommend adding oil every 5 hours just when you change your plugs and when you clean your exhaust. I'll show you really quickly what can happen to your exhaust. And one of the things you're inspecting with your exhaust is if your exhaust overheats, and that would be due to a cooling issue or whatever, you can actually melt out that rear ball. So you can see how it's actually gone into the spring and the ball is obviously melted. And then if it gets hot enough, even you'll melt that back retainer as well. So it's one of the reasons why you want to make sure you're not overheating your board. Anyways, that's obviously a dirty ball too, because that ball is supposed to be white. So if your exhaust ball is black, you're not cleaning it enough. So let's start with changing the front bearing oil here. Move this up a little bit for you guys so you can see a little better. Perfect. Move on to go a little closer. There we go. You can see in there pretty good now. So first you take your fuel tank out, and then in the very front of this carbon plate, in the front of the center, there's a pin, like a hole in the front of the carbon. That hole is so you can get the hex bolt out of the engine so that you can actually inject your oil in. So you take a 4mm Allen key, and once you have that in there, what you want to do is you want to hold the back of the drive shaft so that it prevents the engine from turning. And then it's a pretty good pull, and then it should come out reasonably easy. There we go. So you can see there's a little Allen bolt and a seal. So take that guy out. This syringe that has a hose attached to it that's threaded. What I like to do is I like to disconnect the syringe itself and just set it aside. Just easier. You can straighten it out a little bit better with your hand. Just twisting it in, and it'll catch that thread fairly easy. Obviously, once it's inside that plate, you won't be able to get a wrench or anything on it, so you don't have to worry about getting it right tight or anything. So I take my front bearing oil. I believe it's just like a hydraulic oil or something like that. What I do is put my syringe in, make sure it's all the way pressed in as far as you can, and then get the tip into the oil. There you go, pull it back, 5 milliliters. I just dry my syringe off on a rag, and then what I do is just put it into there and then inject it in. I want to do that, like I said, for freshwater riding. You'll want to do that every 10 hours, and for if you're in the ocean and saltwater and stuff, you'll want to do it every 5 or so. I do that every time I change my plug, every 5 to 10 hours. And then when you put this front seal nut back in, you'll want to use just a little bit of blue Loctite right there. Then you want to put this back onto your Allen key and gently thread it back in, making sure not to cross thread it. And then once you got it all the way back, you don't want to reef on it, you don't want to strip anything. What you want to do is just hold your drive shaft again and just apply a couple pounds of pressure. You don't need to be slamming on it and stuff, especially with a little bit of blue Loctite in there. Just snug it up. That blue Loctite will hold it in place, and with that seal on there, it'll really help to keep it from spinning out. And you're checking it every 5 to 10 hours, so if it does loosen off, you should notice reasonably immediately, because I mean 5 to 10 hours, that's like a couple days of riding. So put this oil away. Next thing we're going to do is change spark plug. So it might be hard to see from there. No, you might be able to see. But there's a retainer spring right here that holds your boot, your spark plug boot, onto your spark plug. What I do is I push that over off the spark plug boot. Then I pull off the spark plug boot straight back towards the side of the board. And there's the boot right there. And then I take that spark plug ring and I pull it over the top of the spark plug and back so that it's actually on the same side as where it's mounted, on the same side as the exhaust. Then use a 19 mil wrench. The board will come with a wrench that's designed for the spark plugs. It looks like this. However, this is for the titanium board. So the titanium board uses a different spark plug. So this won't work on it. So for race boards. Okay. So when you're undoing this, just nice and gentle. It shouldn't be super tight. And then should be able to spin it out by hand. This is the same way you go about taking out the spark plug for when you get water in your engine, but we'll go over that on a different time. You can see, because I take really good care of my boards, this is a brand new plug. There is actually no wear, no oil, no gas, nothing on that plug, because I change out my plugs every single time I ride. Like I buy them in bulk, and yeah, it's one of those things where they're so cheap that it makes sense just to change them all the time. So I'll just put that guy back in. When you're getting plugs, you just want to get that NGK, and then just get the cheapest ones. They're not that expensive. This is an M46L. M as in Michael 46L. I'll just put that guy back in really quick. Just make sure when you're putting the spark plugs in, you don't cross thread them. If you can't screw these things in with your fingers like 100% of the way and then just snug it up with a wrench, then you're cross thread, because they go in pretty easy. And then when you put a wrench on it, you're not trying to torque it up like crazy. It's only supposed to be, I think, 8 pounds, 8 foot-pounds or something. So it's not like super intense. You just want a solid air seal, and you don't want it loosening off while you're riding. Then I put this retaining spring back over top of the spark plug so that it's back on the ECU side. And then I put the boot back in place. I make sure to line up the boot straight up above the plug. And then when I push it in, I try to see that it sits all the way down. You can kind of feel a little bit of a click. It's not like a click noise, but it has you can feel it seat. And then you put that spring back over top of the boot, like so. That easy to change out your plug. Spin motor around. So last thing we'll look at today is your exhaust. The back of it, I'll just undo it and then you'll be able to see what it looks like. This retainer is actually square to the actual muffler and the exhaust. It's not square to the back of the board. So when you're putting it in, you have to remember that, because if you're trying to screw it in and you're sideways, you'll cross thread it. So you have to remember that it's square to the exhaust, not the board. And you just unscrew it counterclockwise. And then there's that retainer. So this is the outside, the back. It's got threads on it. Nice and simple. And when you put it in, you'll want to back spin it until you feel it click on the thread, and then spin it forward. It's very important to try to not cross thread these. And then inside there is your exhaust ball. So you can see this is the normal color of the exhaust ball. It's white. That's what color yours should be. So if you take it out to clean it and it's black, like that one that we saw melted, like you can see the difference. This one used to be this color, and if you clean it, it will stay this color. Like this has been this dirty before, but I cleaned it and it gets back to white. And just like the spring, that spring is obviously, it looks like brand new, but it's got 100+ hours on it. And when you're cleaning out the exhaust, make sure to clean out this side too. There's a rubber seal in there that this ball actually pushes against. And then you'll want to make sure that when you push on this spring, that this ball doesn't fall right inside the spring. I'll just put that back inside now. Normally I'd show you how to clean it, but my board's always pretty clean, so I don't have to clean that ball right now. Okay, so we put this back in, and like I said before, it's square to the muffler, not to the back of the board. So when you're getting it in there, you'll just want to backspin it until you hear that little bit of a click, and then you'll just spin it forward. You can hear that ball squeaking around against that rubber seal until it gets a little bit of tension. Then you don't want to torque this super tight, but you want to get to the end of the thread. You can feel it, like it gets pretty hard, and you can do it with your fingers, and you'll notice that you can push hard enough that it'll make a little bit of an indentation on your fingers. But it's not like, you don't have to put pliers on it and reef on it and try to get like 50 pounds of force. It just snug, and you're done. That's all your servicing for your board this should be done every 5 hours, your plug every 5 hours, and the oil every 10 for freshwater riders. And if you're a saltwater rider, I recommend that you do everything every 5 hours. So once a week, service your board. It's not hard to do, it only takes 10 minutes. Okay, have a good one, Stephen Garner, signing out.